I fell in love with psychiatry 45 years ago, and I've loved it every day since.
How do we become more educated on the brain that God has given us individually?
Well, it creates everything you do and everything you are. Love God with your heart, your soul, and your mind. What creates your mind? It's your brain. It's the physical functioning of your brain. Your brain is the organ of loving, learning, behaving, morality, and when it works right, you work right. And when it's troubled, for whatever reason, you have trouble in your life.
Welcome, everybody, to The Leader's Cut. We have a really special guest today, Dr. Daniel Amen, who is an absolute, if you don't know him yet, you will in about 30 seconds realize the man is a walking genius, no exaggeration. And we're going to be talking about the brain today, which is obviously your expertise. But one of the things as I did a deep dive on you, I fell in love with, you strike me as someone who's very motivated to help the people you love. And that's a big part of your story in various areas. So will you tell them a little bit about your background, how you got into brain scanning, and why you're so passionate about it?
So I'm one of 7 children. I was third. I have an older brother, older sister, 4 younger sisters, so way too much estrogen in my past. And when I turned 18, Vietnam was still going on, and the government had a draft, and I had a low draft number, which meant see you later. And I became an infantry medic, where my love of medicine was born. But about a year into it, I realized I didn't like being shot at. Not my thing. Mm-hmm. Some people like it, not for me. And I got myself retrained as an X-ray technician. It's very important. And I developed a passion for medical imaging. As our professors used to say, how do you know unless you look? And then 1975, I get out of the Army. I go to Southern California College, which is now Vanguard University, because when I was in the Army, I was actually stationed in Europe. Thankfully for me, I didn't go to Vietnam. And I got involved with a group called Teen Challenge, which is Christian groups that deals with drug addicts. Mm-hmm. And I loved the people with Teen Challenge. And so I grew up very Roman Catholic, like not a little bit. My mother was very serious. I was an altar boy. I was actually even an altar boy in the Army. And we had a really cute company clerk, and her name was Chris. And I'm like, hey, would you go out with me? And she goes, will you take me to church? And I'm like, I can do church. I was like, yes. And she took me to a Pentecostal healing service. Now, that was far
other side of the spectrum
from the mass. But she was cute. So I went back and I met these people at Teen Challenge, just fell in love with them. So when I got out of the Army and I realized I wanted to be a doctor, I wanted to learn medicine in the context of my faith. And so I went to Southern California College, now Vanguard University. It's Assemblies of God school. Loved it. And then I went to medical school at Oral Roberts University and loved that. But when I am a second-year medical student, I marry my childhood sweetheart. And 2 months later, she tried to kill herself. And I'm horrified. Take her to see a wonderful psychiatrist, Stan Wallace. He was chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at ORU. Mm. And I come to realize if he helps her, it's not just going to help her, that it's going to help me. And it will help our children and even our grandchildren, as they will be shaped by someone who's happier and more stable. I fell in love with psychiatry 45 years ago, and I've loved it every day since. But I fell in love with the only medical specialty that never looks at the organ it treats. And when I was growing up, my dad called me a maverick. because I didn't just go along. I always like, why? Because I said so. It's like, okay, I know you said so, but why? And I found myself doing the same thing in psychiatry. Because, I mean, obviously the brain is our organ. Why aren't we looking at it? Why are we making diagnoses based on symptom clusters with no biological data? And so, like, my dad called me a maverick because I agitated him. My professors said the same because I'm agitating them. And I'm like, come on, you have to look. It's like, oh, in the future. I'm like, no, we should look now because I have a patient now and I don't know why they're anxious or why they're depressed or why they have suicidal thoughts or why they want to kill people or why they have OCD so bad they can't leave their house. And I was in the Army when I did my psychiatric residency. I'm also a child psychiatrist. I did my child psychiatry fellowship in Honolulu, Hawaii, which was awesome. And my first duty station after that is a place called Fort Irwin. It's in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Now, I'm the boss. And I get biofeedback equipment for Fort Irwin. I learn about quantitative EEG. And my whole life changed from there.
One of the things that I think believers may miss out. So there might be some who are thinking, why does the brain matter so much? Obviously, you've devoted your whole life to it. One of the things that strikes me when Jesus is asked by someone, boil the whole law down to one thing. Take the whole book of Scripture, boil it down to one thing. Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind, which is fascinating to me. And most Christians, they focus on the heart, they focus on the soul, but not on the mind. Romans 12 talks about the renewing of our minds. But as I started to go through several of your books, which, by the way, you, Happier, should be required reading, no exaggeration. And you've probably heard this. Some Christians, when they hear the word happy, it's like, yeah, that's a secular term. That's a self-help term. Actually, the most famous sermon in the history of humanity, Jesus preached, and every line started with, happy are those who. That's what Makarios means. So that book, I want to talk a little bit about the brain, and because I learned so much about mine. I learned that I was brain ignorant until I started studying you, flying blind. So you clearly maybe know more than anybody about the brain. You talk a lot about this being the starting point. You're not stuck with the brain you have. So how do we become more educated on the brain that God has given us individually?
Well, it creates everything you do and everything you are. I mean, it's the brain, right? Love God with your heart, your soul, and your mind. What creates your mind? It's your brain.
Yeah.
It's the physical functioning of your brain. And your brain is the organ of loving, learning, behaving. It's the organ of morality. And when it works right, you work right.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's troubled for whatever reason, you have trouble in your life. And when I talk about that, so growing up Roman Catholic, I sort of thought free will was either 0, you didn't have any because you were damaged, or 100.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you start looking at the brain like I have, we've done 250,000 brain SPECT scans on people from 155 countries. What you realize is free will's gray, that most of us have about 80% free will. Put a 6-pack of Michelob into that brain, and now you only have about 50%.
Yeah.
But what if, because you had a concussion or you had mercury poisoning or you have high levels of lead in your blood, you only have 50% free will. That same 6-pack of Michelob, you may kill somebody on that, or you may kill yourself. And nobody's thinking about, well, what's the health of this person's brain like? And from a spiritual standpoint, I think it's critical if you just think of the ideas of heaven and hell, well, hell is separation from God. And how do you get separated? Generally, it's by making bad decisions. Well, your brain creates all of your decisions, good and bad.
Right.
And so I think brain health should be in church, because you're just, I did this program called the Daniel Plan, which was so much fun. I had finished my second book on the connection between physical health and mental health. Change your brain, change your body. And I was so happy, because even though I've written a lot of books, they take a lot of energy. And so this one taken me a year to write. It's a Sunday morning. My wife and daughter getting ready for church. And I'm just so happy that morning. And we go to church, Mariners Church here in Newport Beach. And I'm like, drop Chloe off at Children's Church. I'll go save us seats, because it's a big church and it's busy. And I walk by hundreds of donuts for sale. Now, I've seen donuts in church since I was 4 years old, but that day they made me furious. And then it was bacon and sausage cooking on the grill. And then as I walked into the sanctuary, they're like cooking hundreds of hot dogs for people. And I'm furious now, because I'm watching. And then as I sat down, the minister started talking about the ice cream festival they had the night before. And when my wife found me in church, I'm typing on my phone, and she hates the phone. She thinks it's the other woman. She says it's the other woman. It's like, why are you on that thing in church? And I showed her what I was typing. Go to church. Get donuts. Bacon, sausage, hot dogs, ice cream. They have no idea they're sending people to heaven early. Save them, then kill them. This is not the plan. And I prayed that Sunday God would use me to change the culture of food at church. And while I'm praying it, just like my dad said, I have an attitude, because I'm like, this is the dumbest prayer you've ever prayed. How's that going to happen? You know, you're in a war with your colleagues about imaging. How has that ever happened? You're not connected. Right? I go to church, but I wasn't connected to systems. No. And I said, God, that's my prayer. You deal with it. 2 weeks later, Rick Warren called me, the senior pastor at Saddleback Church, one of the largest churches in the world. He's the author of our generation's biggest selling book, The Purpose-Driven Life. He said, I'm fat. My church is fat. Will you help me? And I'm like, you had me from hello, because remember the prayer, one of the biggest pastors in the world calls you. And we created the Daniel Plan, which is not named after me, but the prophet in the Old Testament who wouldn't eat the king's bad food. And 15,000 people signed up the first day. The first year, they lost $250,000 pounds. And the program has been done in thousands of churches around the world. So prayer is sort of a big deal.
Yeah. 14-day turnaround. That was a quick turnaround.
That was a quick turnaround.
I had no idea the 5 different brain types. Okay. I came into this flying blind. And honestly, one of my big takeaways in studying you has been there's this obsession out there with biohacking. Everyone's trying to get their biological age younger, you know. But as I was reading several of your books, I had this thought. I said to my wife, what does it matter if my biological age is 50% of my actual age, if my brain's age is twice the age of my natural age? And I had never thought that before. I did, and everybody should go to brain health assessment. Is it assessment or assessment?
Assessment.
Yeah. Brainhealthassessment.com. I took the assessment. It'll help you understand what brain type you have. And then everybody should read the book, You Happier. You explain everything. I'm a persistent. So I'm type 3. And my wife was crying. She was laughing so hard about how you described my entire life. And then down to the things that are good for she was crying. She about wet herself when I was reading it out loud to her. So I'm not pushing something. Y'all know I don't do that. It was really that eye-opening for me. So will you walk us through I know we don't have enough time to walk through the 5 different brain types, but just how important it is to understand the specifics about our God-given brain.
Well, we're all unique. And, I hate so much about psychiatry. It's like, oh, you have these 6 of these 9 symptoms, so you're depressed. So for the rest of your life, you're going to take an SSRI. That's insanity. And when I started looking at the brain, I realized, ADD is not one thing. Anxiety and depression, they're not one thing. Addiction, not one thing. Obesity, not one thing. And it ultimately clustered around these 5 types of brains. I mean, there's actually, on the brain health assessment, there's 16 types.
Right.
But really, it's type 1 is balanced. Your brain is healthy and you're normal. Used to be more common before the pandemic. After the pandemic, normal went from like 44% of the population to 13% of the population. The pandemic was so awful. And our reaction to the pandemic was so awful. So there's the balanced people, not that much. There's the spontaneous people. It's really our ADD group. Short attention span, distractibility, highly creative, impulsive, probably say things they shouldn't say, but they're out of the box people. Type 3 is our persistent people. They're persistent. They're focused. They get stuff done, but they worry. They can hold grudges. If things don't go their way, they get upset. They can be a little oppositional and argumentative. But they're often your doctors and neurosurgeons. They want it this way. And then there's the sensitive people, deeply empathic, needing to be connected. The pandemic hurt them the most. But they can be sad. They have too many ants, automatic negative thoughts, the thoughts that come in their head and ruin their day. And they can tend toward depression. And type 5 is our cautious people. They're early and they're always seeing trouble. And so they get into less trouble because they predict it, but they struggle with physical health symptoms and tension. And then type 6, very common, especially in children and grandchildren of alcoholics, it's the impulsive, compulsive type or the spontaneous, persistent types. And that's what my first wife had because she grew up in a very abusive alcoholic home. Now, she's my childhood sweetheart. I talked to her every day from the time I was 15 to the time I was 18, and I didn't know her dad beat her mom. I didn't know of the incredible stress and abuse going on in her house because children of alcoholics learn not to talk, not to trust, and not to feel. And so, when I figured that out, I'm like, I have grandchildren of alcoholics. I need to study that. So that was a big part of what I did. And they're type 6.
So the love your brain idea. Okay. I've heard you talk a lot about it. That the things I actually give my brain, feed my brain, in a lot of ways can determine my quality of life. I'm being sensitive.
I like that idea. That's a good idea.
Well, I didn't understand just how
Nobody
much.
cares about their brain.
I don't understand.
It's like, why?
I don't understand. And being totally honest, here's how I saw it until I started studying you. I thought if we were taking my health, my body was the vehicle and my brain was a piece of baggage in the trunk. That's honestly how I saw it, but didn't realize it. But then after reading several of the books, I realized my brain is the vehicle and my body is the trailer. My brain is pulling behind it. And wherever my brain goes, my body's going to follow. So I can't overstate. It was mind-blowing to me. But then when I started to look into my specific brain, there are things my brain feeds on and needs. So like serotonin for persistent. I know we can't get so specific, but what are some tips that all of us, no matter our brain type, that we can use to love our brain.
Right. There are things for all of us to do.
Mhm.
And the top 3 are brain envy. You got to care about it. Nobody cares about their brain. Why? Because you can't see it. You can see the wrinkles in your skin or the fat around your belly, and you can do something when you're unhappy with it. But it's one of the few organs we don't screen,
Right.
even though if you're blessed to live to 85, you have a 1 in 2 chance of being diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. This is like not okay.
Yeah.
We should screen it. At least, if you have dementia in your family, starting at 40, you should screen it. And if you don't, probably at 50. When I turned 50, my doctor wanted me to have a colonoscopy. I asked him why I didn't want to look at my brain. Wasn't the other end just as important? And the whole point of your body is to carry around your brain. That's the point. So brain envy, got to care about it. Avoid things that hurt it. You just have to know the list. And quite frankly, most second graders know the list. Right? I went to my daughter's second grade class and I wrote 20 things on the board. And I'm like, separate them for me. Good for your brain, bad for your brain. They got all of them right except one, orange juice, which they put in the good category, which belongs in the bad category, because whenever you unwrap fruit sugar from its fiber source, it turns toxic in your body. Kill the fruit juice. And second graders knew alcohol was not a health food and marijuana was not innocuous. So somehow they lose that in their adolescence.
Yeah.
And then the third thing, so brain envy, avoid bad things, do good things. And so what are good things? It's like, well, exercise, because blood flow is so important.
Yeah.
Your brain is 2% of your body's weight, but uses 20% of the blood flow, 20% of the oxygen. And brain cells don't die. It's blood vessels that die. So if you want to keep your brain healthy, you have to keep blood flow healthy. And did you know, it's going to be a little weird, 40% of 40-year-olds have erectile dysfunction. I don't know if we can talk about this on a religious
We can definitely
podcast.
talk about it.
40% of 40-year-olds have erectile dysfunction. Do you know what that means? 40% of 40-year-olds have brain dysfunction. Because if you have blood flow problems
blood flow.
anywhere,
Wow.
it means they're everywhere. 70% of 70-year-olds have erectile dysfunction. It's like, that means 70% of 70-year-olds have brain dysfunction. And what people tell us when we get their brain healthy is their sex lives are better. Well, hallelujah. I think that's amazing because that just means you're more connected. So blood flow is so important, exercise, and your brain's 2% of your body's weight, but uses 20 to 30% of the calories you consume. If you have a fast food diet, or you have a diet that they served at Mariners, I think they're better now, then you're going to have fast food mind. That's not what you want. And you know the verse, your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit that was given to you by God, that was bought for you at a price of the blood of Jesus Christ. So why are you treating it terribly? It's like you're not honoring the gift of your body, whose point is to carry around your brain, by what you eat. And so I think we have to be purposeful. And I love this phrase when it comes to food. Do you love it? Because I love everything I eat. And does it love me back?
That's great.
Because you're in a relationship with food. And in You Happier, that's one of the pillars of happiness, loving food that loves you back.
Yeah, that was what on the persistent brain type, one of the pieces of advice was eat lots of seafood. And that's the tryptophan. I love seafood. I eat it all the time. And I told my wife, see, this is why I want to eat fish 5 nights a week. It's good for my brain.
Yeah, but check your mercury levels because you want to be careful. I found my mercury levels were too high. I had to go and actually detox them. But the omega-3 fatty acids, so important. And also for the persistent type. So I like a high plant-based diet with healthy protein and lots of fat. And I like sort of a low glycemic diet, which means glycemia is how quickly does a food raise your blood sugar. The persistent type generally do not do well on a ketogenic diet because there's not enough carbs. So you need healthy carbs because it's carbs that cause an insulin response, which pushes tryptophan into your brain, what makes serotonin. And so people who go on a low carb diet, I was on the Rachel Ray show, and I was talking about, she had the persistent brain type, and she said, I went on one of those low carb, no carb diets, and I was so mean. I wonder why my husband didn't leave me. And so you've got to eat right for your type. And if for people who take the brain health assessment, we talk about, what are the right strategies? And then you do better with serotonin interventions like 5-HTP or tryptophan or saffron.
Why do you think the brain is so overlooked by so many? It's so essential to our everyday lives and how we function in our quality of life. How did it become such an overlooked? If I hurt my ankle, I'm going to the doctor and they're going to do an x-ray. How, not just in my world, but in your world, how did the brain, how have we overlooked it for so long in such horrific measure?
It's pretty disturbing when you think about it. And I've been very disturbed. When I first started doing brain SPECT imaging in 1991, I went to an all-day seminar at the American Psychiatric Association on SPECT. I was like so excited. I wanted to okay, should invest in the camera companies. And this is the future. And a couple of years later, the American Psychiatric Association said, no, imaging's not helpful because it didn't fit the nomenclature. It didn't fit the diagnostic Bible. When you start scanning, you realize depression is like fever or it's like chest pain. It doesn't tell you what causes it, and it doesn't tell you what to do for it. But then all of a sudden what you're saying is 40,000 psychiatrists and 800,000 other doctors who are just giving psychiatric drugs like candy to people with no biological data are committing malpractice. And so people, whenever you say, oh, we have a better way.
Sure.
What happens in science is the powers that be that make money a certain way want to kill you. And it's not just me. There's a book written in 1962 called The Structure of Scientific Revolution by Thomas Kuhn. And he said scientific revolutions happen in stages. So first, normal science. Second is somebody notices a problem. So I noticed a problem. Why aren't we looking? I'd give somebody Prozac because I was trained to do that, and it would hurt them. And that would horrify me because I went into psychiatry for very personal reasons, as we talked about. I'm not hurting people. Why? No, that horrifies me. Okay. Somebody notices a problem. Well, the status quo notices the problem too. They make small incremental changes that don't really change anything. So we've had 6 versions of the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, basically unchanged since 1980. So that's 44 years ago. And then someone creates a new mousetrap. So there's a revolution. You should never give people psychiatric drugs unless you look at their brain first and teach them how to love and care for their brain, because then they'll either not need the medicine or they'll need way less. So the revolution we do at Amen Clinics every day: detailed histories, imaging, cognitive testing, natural ways to heal the brain, get your body healthy to support your brain. The 5th stage is the most consistent, predictable of all the stages, the rejection.
Yeah.
They try to eliminate you. And I've been shamed. I've been bullied. I've been called a charlatan, a snake oil salesman. I'm taking advantage of mentally ill people. In fact, in 2005, 2020 came to my office and they lied to me. They said I wanted to talk to me about my work on childhood bipolar disorder. They opened the interview with Brad Peterson, a doctor from Columbia, told us you should be arrested for your work. What would you say? And thank God I was on the speech team in college. And I had a professor who said, when you don't know what to say, take a breath, smile. And I remembered that, take a breath, smile. I said, that's so interesting. Last week, someone told me I should win a Nobel Prize for my work. This week, you're telling me I should be arrested. It sort of keeps me balanced. And
great.
At the end of the interview, Richard Avia was the reporter. He takes his microphone off, throws it on the ground, looks at the producer and said, this guy's for real. Why are you picking on him? And they actually never ran the interview. And just yesterday, I heard Brad Peterson and I have a paper coming out on SPECT and depression in Translational Psychiatry, one of the really great psychiatric journals. So God's little humor on how he manages the craziness that is my life.
But it's obvious. It's obvious that I don't know how many interviews I've watched. You're very passionate about getting the message out. But it doesn't strike me as a snake oil salesman. It does strike me as somebody who really does see that God created him to help many who are flying blind. There's so many people hurting out there, and they may think it's just due to one or two things, environment or trauma. It is so much more complex than that. But even with whatever they've been through, there's so many things they can do. They're not stuck with the brain that they have. And you have, how many books have you written? What's the actual number?
42.
I knew it was at least in the high 30s. That is.
But I love it. And I think this is why I'm on the planet. You know, the things that really stick out is, why are psychiatrists the only medical doctors who never look at the organ they treat? Think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane, right? I'm a psychiatrist. I know how to diagnose insanity. To think you know what's wrong with someone just because they told you. I can't tell you how stupid that is. You know, what we've seen in, one of the big lessons is mild traumatic brain injuries, a major cause of psychiatric problems. And nobody knows it because they're not looking at the brain. And if you don't look, you don't know. Does your brain work too hard or not hard enough? Is it toxic? Is it traumatic? How do you know unless you look? And it's the simple things that I say that get people to go, oh, maybe I should look. I've tried this, I've tried that. Because on average, if you come to see us at one of our 11 clinics, you have failed 3.3 providers, 6 medicines, and you have 4.2 diagnoses. You're complicated. But if we treat you, on average, 6 months later, 84% of our patients are better. I'm pretty excited about that. Now, it's not everybody because we don't know everything. And I think imaging is in its infancy. But it's way better, right? When people call me a snake oil salesman, I mean, one, I say does have 23% omega-3 fatty acids. Just saying. But it's like, okay, so say that's true. But what about the people who are prescribing last year 337 million prescriptions for antidepressants with no biological data? No, that's insane.
Yeah.
Or 27% of all doctor visits, someone's getting a benzo. no, this is not rational. And I hate the term mental illness because it shames people. It's stigmatizing and it's wrong. They're brain health issues. So what if mental health was really brain health?
So great.
If it's brain health, then you have to be responsible for what you eat.
So
if it's
great.
brain health, you have to be responsible for how much exercise you get. If it's brain health, you have to go to bed, right? Because if you don't sleep, your brain won't clean or wash itself. Trash builds up, and now you're anxious and depressed. If it's brain health, you got to get your gut right. It changes everything.
I love it. To me, the difference between mental health, brain health, you're saying, I've got to own this one. Mental health, so many think, well, it's because this happened to me, this was done to me, and I really don't have any control now. Brain health, I got to own it all. And that's what was so empowering going through several of the books. I can actually do something. I'm not stuck. These are practical steps I can take. But then one of the things I love, you don't just keep it with supplements, the little micro steps, and you even go through some of yours.
Tiny habits.
The tiny habits. I love how I need to come up with a list of practical things that are not just so huge they overwhelm me, but little steps that I can take that help me care for my brain. How do you, when you get somebody who says to you, I feel like I am stuck with the brain that I have. I'll
show it to you. And then I'm like, okay, if you do what I say, this is how it'll look in 4 months or 6 months. And if you don't do what I say, this is how it's going to look in about 3 or 4 years. So which brain do you want? See, but nobody actually comes to me and says, I can't change it.
Yeah.
Because I just show them scan after scan after scan of people who are worse than them, and they've changed their brain. Now, if you don't do what I ask you to do, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah.
But if you do what I ask you to do, generally people get better. How exciting is that? That's where I feel like I hit a home run. I remember, I don't know if you remember, but 1989, the Dodgers played the A's in the World Series. And I was living in Northern California then. And Kurt Gibson was hurt and couldn't play in the game, but he comes up, it's ninth inning, pinch hits and hits a home run. And as he runs around second base, he goes, yes. And I just found I felt like that a lot after imaging. It's like, yes, this person's better.
I love it. That's you are so passionate about helping one person. I think one of the things with very successful people, everybody becomes just one number. Every interview I've seen, the stuff that I've read, the one person does matter. The way you tell stories about your family and individual pain points where you stepped in and you wanted to help. Even where the penguins, and I want to talk about the penguins because that it's such a personal but powerful, here's this very successful human who loves someone so deeply. He's trying to figure it out. So will you tell the penguin story, number one? Because a lot of people who are watching this haven't heard where your love for penguins came from.
Yeah, it's a little weird. I have lots of penguins, and my patients buy them for me. I had one patient who had a shopping addiction give me like 30 penguins for Christmas, and I'm like, I have to change something about your treatment plan. It's not working. Okay, why do I collect penguins? It's 1985, and I'm a child psychiatry fellow. And when I got married, my first wife had a 2-year-old son, Anthony, and I adopted him. And he was hard for me, argumentative, oppositional. Things didn't go his way, got upset. And I'm like not having fun being his dad. And I talked to my supervisor and I'm like, this isn't going well. What should I do? And she goes, you need more one-on-one time with him, which is not really what I wanted because it was hard for me. Anyways, more one-on-one time. just he and I, we went to a place called Sea Life Park, which is on Oahu. So I was doing my child psychiatry training in Hawaii. And Sea Life Park, some people will know that park because it's in the movie 50 First Dates with Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler. Anyways, we go to the whale show and it was awesome. And then we go to the sea lion show and that was funny. And then we go to the dolphin show, which was really cool. And at the end of the day, Anthony grabs my shirt and he goes, I want to see Fat Freddy. I'm like, who's Fat Freddy? And rolls his eyes at me. He's like, it's the penguin, Dad. Don't you know anything? Which sort of highlighted the quality of our relationship. And so there was one more show. Fat Freddy had one more show. And we sit down in this stadium, and this little fat Humboldt penguin comes on the stage and goes to the high dive, climbs the ladder, like 20 feet in the air, goes to the edge of the board and bounces, and then jumps in the water. And I'm like, whoa. And then he gets out, bowls with his nose, counts with his flipper, jumps through a hoop of fire. And I'm like mesmerized. And I have my arm around my son and like, I'm a good dad. We're having a good day. And then the trainer asked Freddie to go get something. Freddie went and got it and immediately brought it right back. And time stood still for me. I'm like, damn, I asked this kid to get something for me. And he wants to have a discussion for like 20 minutes. And I knew my son was smarter than the penguin. Mm-hmm. So I went up to the trainer afterwards and I'm like, how did you get Freddie to do all of these cool things? And she looked at Anthony and then she looked at me and she said, unlike parents, whenever Freddie does anything like what I want him to do, I notice him. I give him a hug and I give him a fish. And the light went on in my head that even though my son didn't like raw fish, my daughter would have totally worked. She loved sushi from the time she was little. I totally would have worked with her. But whenever he did what I wanted him to do, I paid no attention to him at all because I was like my own father. But when he didn't do what I wanted him to do, I gave him a lot of attention because I didn't want to raise bad kids. So I was reinforcing the wrong things with him. So I collect penguins as a way to remind myself to notice the good things about the people in my life rather than the bad. And many Christians get this wrong because I'm like, spare the rod and spoil the child. And if you look at Solomon's son, it didn't turn out well, just saying. But a couple of months later, I went to Marine World, another sea park in Northern California. And I went to the killer whale show. One of the whales did everything. The other whale didn't do anything that day. And so I went up to the trainer afterwards because I like learning. And I'm like, so I noticed when the whale wasn't performing, you sort of gave him a timeout. And she's like, that's exactly right. I said, well, what would the whale have done if you got a big stick and beaten it? And she looked at me like I was the dumbest person on the planet. And then she got what I was really asking her. She said, if I would have beaten the whale, he would have never performed for me again because he wouldn't trust me. He'd be afraid of me. And it was so powerful. Notice what you like more than what you don't like. Now, it doesn't mean you don't deal with bad behavior, but you don't deal with it with violence.
Yeah. So for the persistent brain type, that's actually one of the big things to work on. Notice what you like more than what you don't. And reading that was really eye-opening for me and my son, just processing through. And it's definitely, I knew it was there, but until I really read it and saw this is a tendency that someone with this brain has. So I'm just saying the amount of understanding I have about me after really reading what my brain is like and what it's prone to, it is phenomenal. So how would you, to a single mom out there who will never get a scan, but she really wants to start, she's hearing what you're saying. She's been feeling some things. She's been under a little bit of a dark cloud lately. Where should she start on this journey of learning her brain and then learning how to love her brain? What would you say to her?
So a long time ago, I realized not everybody's getting a scan.
Mm-hmm.
So based on thousands of scans, tens of thousands of scans, I developed the brain health assessment. So brainhealthassessment.com. And then this is the most important part of your body. So if you love yourself, it starts by loving and caring for your brain.
Mm-hmm.
People can get Raising Mentally Strong Kids or You Happier. They can follow me on Instagram or TikTok. And, we have so many free resources. Yeah. And ultimately, it comes like the master or the mother tiny habit is when you go to do something today, just ask yourself, is this good for my brain or bad for it? And if you can answer that with information and love, you're going to start making better decisions, which means you'll start feeling better. And our society is not for you. God is for you. But big pharma and big food and big tech, they are not for you. And so you just have to ask yourself, is this what I'm doing, watching the news, good for my brain or bad for it? Probably that's bad for it, because the news is no longer the news. Mm-hmm. It's meant to sell you pharmaceuticals and is all about scary things that they talk about over and over again. Whatever you do, is this good for my brain or bad for it? Driving through Jack in the Box, probably bad for your brain. It's good for my brain or bad for it. Eat the orange, don't drink the juice.
It's great. I love it. Well, I can't tell you how grateful I am to get to sit with you, and just want to say thank you. As I was going through multiple books, I told my wife, when Dr. Amen sits down to write a book, clearly, one book from you is like anybody else's opus. I mean, there's a lot in there. There's a lot to help. And it is page after page. And so I just want to say thank you. I've learned so much. I'm going to continue to learn a lot. And I will probably look back on the study that I started with you as a turning point for me and my health. Pretty serious about my health. But now bringing my brain into how I care for my body is going to be a game changer. And so I just say thank you. Thanks for sitting down. Thanks for your work. Thanks for taking the shots. Thanks for pushing through so that the rest of us would get the message and could steward the last third of Jesus' advice. Don't just love the Lord with your heart. Don't just love the Lord with your soul, but with your mind. And so my prayer is that because of you and the way God's using you, we would all be able to do that a lot better than before. So thank you.
Amen.
Well, thanks for joining us this week. It was a blast to have this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Make sure you grab, whether you're a parent and you grab his recent book on raising mentally resilient kids, You Happier, you got to find that book. I'm telling you right now. Okay. I don't push stuff. You've got to read this. Change Your Brain, Change Your Life is another great one. And there's some children's books there too about negative thoughts. So just make sure you go through the list. There's some amazing resources that I promise will help you steward you better. I love you so much. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me for this episode of The Leader's Cut. I pray you sense God speak directly to you through it. Before you leave, make sure you hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new episode is posted. And be sure to share your takeaways and favorite one-liners in the comments. And if you think it could help a friend or two, I'd love it if you would send them the link to share it with them. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.